There we go. Okay. Can you hear me? Also, hello. Yeah, is that in? Yes. Yes, indeed. Hello, friends. Alright, just. We hear you. Okay, good. Yes. Just. Some housekeeping stuff. Like this. This right here is about as, like, energetic as I'm probably gonna be for the entire discussion. Just because. Um, the heat pad is helping my shoulder, but it's being a pain right now. It's like the muscle right under your shoulder blade, just all day. Not doing too good on the energy front. However, I wanted to show y'all my little shirt. Look at that. It says "Love your planet," and it's a red panda that's planting flowers. With a hat and stuff. Ah. So even if I'm not, oh, sorry about that, I'm knocking the mic all over the place there. But yeah, so even if I'm not feeling all that great at the moment, at least there's that. That is a positive. So yay. Also, I need to get my feet out of the line of fire of the air conditioner because that'll probably help a little bit. There we go. All right. Saved our energy all day for this. Oh, well, thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. Thank you much. Also, remember water friends. I mean, we remember water friends because water friends are important. But remember to drink water, friends. Yeah. Two separate thoughts. Both accurate. Also, it's not letting me scroll to see if there's any other alerts, but when I opened OBS, it said that Lil Bonkai just subscribed, so thank you very much for that. Much appreciated. Love the marine life. Exactly. Exactly. On that note, if you want some whale adjacent or whale centric book recommendations, there's a there's a video on the YouTubes. Also, this is how far Orion's gotten so far. I had like the slitted pupils on, and it just looked real weird. So at least for now, we're just going with solid colors. But yeah, there we go. All right. So, oh, I was gonna do a trigger thing and didn't. Okay, one sec. Looks so strangely naked. He does. He needs clothes. He needs clothes. At least, ooh, yeah. So the the granny squares that are left over from when I was trying to do the temperature blanket with granny squares happens to be the exact size needed to be a little jacket vest thing for this little dude. Look at that. I would need to, attach it somehow in the front to have it fully secure. But look at that. Yes, very chic. Very chic indeed. Alright. So you sit there. You sit over there. Ow. Alright. Just bear with me for a second while I'm building this. Okay, how? Come on. This. Particularly like the color, it has flare. It does. It does. Okay. Okay. Alright. One sec. Alright. So, for... Alright. If I'm putting in a trigger warning thing, does it work better and is it less of an issue to the person viewing it? Is it more useful to the person viewing it if it says specifically what the trigger is, or just that there is a thing? Because I want it to be so that you can mute or click off or something if there's a thing that is going to negatively impact someone, but I don't want it to cause the triggering thing, you know? I don't want to cause the trigger to happen, or whatnot, if that makes sense. Find it more useful if it's more specific. Okay. For that, like, okay, that's what I was thinking. Like, I was trying to figure whether or not to write it out fully or just do the acronym, I guess. No, short form for that. Like, which would be better for the viewer. Probably best to write it out. Okay. Can do. Can do. I'm assuming no shorthand. Good point. Okay, so we've got that. If I can scroll back up here to, there we go. And that's not gonna work. Okay. That's why it's not working. Alright, 1 second. That sounds a little more legible. There we go. Okay. So I'll hide that one for right now. Alright. So we'll see while doing the discussion today how it works and stuff, but as we're getting towards the triggering content, whenever it's going to be brought up, I'm going to try to remember, or we can have some kind of system in place, I don't know, at this point, to, like, I don't know, a minute ahead of time, or as we're getting to that part of the plot, put up the trigger and then take it down after that's been discussed. Because I know that would help, like, break me out of any kind of circular anything that tends to happen when I'm talking about triggering topics, because it's a definitive endpoint, and it would be a signal to anyone watching. So there's that. At which point it would be also a visual thing, either up there or somewhere else, depending on how it ends up working today. As like that's a safe point to come back in if you need to. So there we go. Yeah. The chapters we're discussing this week contains triggering material. Please take care of yourself. Feel free to mute or click off when we get there. Exactly. Alright. That being said, 1 second. We've got a little trusty fidget cube over here. So, if when you hear the clicky noises, that's what it is. Yeah. So, before we get into it, anyone have particular anythings that y'all want to share, either in relation to the chapters or some? Wait, one sec. OBS, stop trying to hide the chat box. That's a jerk move, dude. Come on. There we go. Okay. Now I can see if there's new events that pop up and other stuff. Alright. Also, let's put that over there. That's not what I need. There we go. Okay. Alright. So, where we left off in where we left off the end of chapter 4 is Sorcha getting together any materials that she'd be able to take from Father Brian's cottage after finding him dead, and heading deeper into the forest with Lynn, the dog, and Father Brian's horse. She's just been told that she has to weave a shirt for each of her brothers out of starwort, and doesn't have any real knowledge of the sewing or weaving process aside from like really basic stuff. Like, she's seen people in the village, she's seen people in the keep do weaving, but she's never done it herself because she's the healer. So, there's that. And has to fashion tools and materials and everything in order to do any of what she wants to do. The nettle thread making videos we found really helped us understand what she's doing. Yeah, and we're fascinating. Yeah. Ow, 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 ow. Which, yeah, okay. I need to watch those, because I've been wanting to try and make thread or some kind of yarn or some kind of fiber craft with the cannabis plants that we end up growing every year, and I've got like a bunch of them at this point, but the ones that I have are several years old at this point. So I'm trying to figure how best to do that, or even if it would be a viable thing, and or to like just do something with the fresh ones at the moment. But you know, also thank you for the pets, much appreciated. But yeah, because like I started saving the stalks for the fiber, and they just ended up sitting there. is what it is. Yeah. Definitely gonna watch through those. I wonder if the same process would work. Could do. Yeah, it is nettle when it's allowed to get sizable. Nettle can have a pretty thick stalk, and it's the same. It's not the same kind of plant. It's got completely different like physiology and stuff, but it's got a similar fiber setup to um to cannabis and to other like fibrous materials like that. So we'll see. Um, but yeah, because one of the issues with nettle, and I know this because like when I was doing my master's, I was talking to somebody at one of the conferences who had like a nettle cord around her neck. So it's like, oh, you did the thing with the stuff. Like, yeah, I made this. It was annoying. It took so long. Mostly because at each joint, the fibers are kind of warped in such a way that that's more or less the length of the thread. So you only have like sometimes about that long of a continuous piece before you have to somehow attach it to something else. And it, you're being stung by the material, but for nettle, at least after you've dealt with it for an extended period of time, it's not really an issue anymore. Like, you kind of be desensitized to it. Which doesn't seem to be the case for starwort, which is interesting. Because any of, like, well, the only one that I really have experience with is nettle. And for that, you can get to a point where your hands might still, like, tingle a bit from the it's been a while since I looked into it. I believe it's salicylic acid. But your fingers might still kind of tingle a little bit, but the surface coming into contact with the material becomes used to it enough that it's just like, oh, okay, we're doing this now. And didn't get the impression that the joints were such a problem. Wonder if it's the particular plant they were using. It might be. It might be. It also sounded like that particular person wasn't all that versed in turning plant materials into like fibercraft. So I don't know. But yeah, I remember that being one of the issues with like hemp versus cannabis for use as a fiber. It's basically the same plant, but the ones that are used for hemp, quote unquote, tend to have like longer fibers than their counterparts. Or if it's used for hemp fiber, then it's that. But there's so many strains at this point that it's just like that particular strain has been bred to have longer fibers. But yeah, it's one of those things. And it sounds like that particular is also shared by the Starwort. So, which is also interesting, just as a thing. Maybe not getting desensitized to it's part of the magic, like the curse is biting back. That could be it, actually. That could be. Yeah, that sounds like a good part of the interpretation, honestly. Yeah. Because, well, yeah, I mean, she's actively fighting it, so that's the battle wounds that she's got to deal with, along with everything else that's happening. But yeah, so, ow. Yeah. Um, hmm. Alright, so, initially she's got, what is it? A pine branch and a pine cone for the spindle and the boral. So the spindle that she's using to make the thread. And I wasn't aware of this, but it makes sense. For some plants, apparently ash is used to kind of hasten the prep work to turn plant materials into a spinnable fiber to kind of help break down the adhesion between fiber strands, in addition to bashing it with a rock, because, that's the easiest way to do it, really. Um, um, and there was also a note in there that, like, just like she was telling Simon tales to kind of distract him from nightmares and the PTSD that he's dealing with and everything. She's running through the tales in her head to kind of distract from the pain in her hands. And from oh, from what we see in these two chapters, that seems to be a not a default, defense mechanism, I suppose, when she's dealing with painful situations. No, I don't know if that's going to continue into like 7, but that's a thing up to this point at least. The ash seems like a more caustic, polluting way to do it. She could have used her knife to strip the pets as well. She didn't know that. Yeah, yeah. True, true. And, like, she's a healer who, from the sounds of it, has been vegan or at least vegetarian since she was, like, a really young kid, because of having such a strong connection to animal life around her. So doesn't have the the hunting know-how for like skinning game and whatnot. Like, she's got the healer's knowledge, but most of that is either experimentation or based on old texts that she found in like the recesses of the Keep Library, or some from Father Brian. But most of it, from the sounds of it, most of the plant knowledge that she's got is essentially self-taught or self-researched, I suppose. And for someone who, like, at this point is, like, still 12, that's a feat and a half, just in and of itself. You know? Like, look, one sec. It's at once, like, it hurts, but it's also helping to have, like, pressure with the heat, so, yeah. Ow. Okay. You know, I'll just unplug that. And okay, so yeah, at this point, when she's telling herself stories, we appreciate that she manages to survive food-wise, but it wasn't easy. Yeah, yeah, the number of times that I've read a story where it's like, this person has never had to forage for themselves, they can't hunt. Oh, look, they stumbled upon a random store of food. How useful. Like, you're in the middle of the forest. Why is it there? Never explained. Like, she manages to find stuff and she manages to survive and deal, but like, it's believable. Yeah, very much. Oh yeah, and we've got a giant like ash tree that fell like pretty close to the cave that she's living in. And she goes out and talks to the spirit of the tree, the spirit, well, the spirit that lives in the tree. And there's a point made that like I would be able to fashion a new spindle and a weaving frame from the wood of this tree, that but I'm not going to cut into it until the spirit has a chance to move on to another location. Because, yeah, especially going with the spirituality of the people there, it's very much like spirit of place and animism, and I mean, she's seen the fair folk like multiple times at this point. So yeah, of all of them, I think it's like what Sorcha, Connor, and maybe Finbar are probably the closest to that side of it. Um, yeah. Ah, okay, one sec. And oh, okay. She's out, kind of having a bit of an existential crisis at this point because she's been isolated in a cave, just spinning starwort for months at this point, and is feeling really cut off from everything, and just kind of decides to go climb a tree and see if there's anything, like if there's any inhabited spaces around. And it happens to also be midsummer, meaning that the brothers are going to show at the lake, and if she's not back, then she might miss them. So he's up there in a tree, sees some young people trailing through and putting ties on the hawthorn as it's blooming and stuff. And she's up there, and the smell of like hawthorn blossoms are just kind of wafting around. And it's a time marker because that's the point that hawthorn would be blooming. But also hawthorn is a symbol of love and protection. So she's up in the trees. Companionship is like number 4 in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right after food, water, and shelter. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I mean, she's got Lynn at this point, but that can only go so far. You know? Like, I remember being a kid, like, probably. How old would I have been? Yeah, I would have been like 10, 12, something like that. And legitimately wanted to just, like, go live on the side of a mountain somewhere just by myself with, like, the critters and call it a day. Mostly because humans are weird and didn't quite get human interaction at that point. But yeah, no, to be within like yelling distance of other people, like, yeah, okay. Or just like in the general vicinity, but not like fully isolated at this point. Just cause. I can totally imagine Minnie right? Right. My little 12-year-old self just like, yeah. With like squirrel sentries and stuff. Yeah, yeah, no, totally. Like, that, yeah, there's a reason that for a good chunk of my childhood, My Side of the Mountain was a favorite. Like, My Side of the Mountain and Julie of the Wolves were, like, top tier for, like, at least, like, 4 or 5 years. So there's that. um, but yeah. um, so, okay. We've got, we've got ribbons in gold, white, and green decorating the hawthorns, and because the walk back would be presumably kind of long, and she wanted to make it back before um, dusk. Uh, like, decided to try and get down from the tree and run off back into the forest, even though there was someone sitting at the base of the tree that she was in. And because her hands are kind of gnarled at this point from constant working with the starwort and uh, lack of proper medical care, because she's the only one there, and you have to kind of have some serious dexterity to get the spines out, and the time to bandage the injuries caused by it and everything and let it heal, which she doesn't have either of those. Doesn't have the dexterity that she used to have when it came to silently moving in the forest. At which point, the person uh, notices that she's in the tree and seems to think that she's one of the fairies. And runs off, and we get like a, kind of a ritual scene where she's getting everything ready to meet her brothers, because she's kind of wary of whether or not the lady of the forest was being honest with her, and like, but wants to believe it anyway. There was the near encounter with the cool sacred tree before that too. There is that. There is that. Yeah. Where is it? The one with like the face carved into it. So I think that one's in chapter 6. Or was there another tree? Okay. Also, we've got a side noting self heal and comfrey to help with like fever and infection with her hands and stuff. So yeah. Except when it was then. Yeah, it's closer to later events. And then the brothers show up that first midsummer and try to get as many ply as many supplies for Sorcha as they can while they're there for like a night. Um, so yeah. Pranella Vulgaris, the common self-heal, heal-all, woundwort, heart of the earth, or carpenter's herb. It's in the mint family. Used for inflammatory bowel disease, diarrhea, colic, upset stomach, and irritation. So for this, it'd be like the irritation and things. But that another shot. Um, Young leaves and stems can be eaten raw in salads. The plant as a whole can be boiled and eaten as a leaf vegetable, and the aerial parts can be powdered and brewed in a cold infusion to make a beverage. Reminds us of echinacea. Kind of, yeah. Yeah. Oh, I just remember that she also did a. There was also a mention of willow bark, too. Come on. Yeah, the willow bark. Okay. So, the last part of 5 is the brothers coming to like replenish Sorcha's stores of materials. It's the first time that they've been human since the spell took effect, and we find out that they're aware of everything that's happening, but because he's trained as a druid for years at this point, Connor's the only one who can keep his human awareness and understanding and things and like cognitive abilities well in swan form. So the rest kind of revert to the more animal side of their nature, I suppose. And all of them, like, rightfully so, really, seem rather haunted by everything as they're coming up. The way the brothers figured out what was going on without Sorcha telling was well done. Yeah. That was very well done. Like, yeah. Between, like, between all of them kind of working together and bouncing ideas off each other, and just that deep awareness that they all inherently had prior to everything happening. It, yeah. Because, like, I know I've read, or at least seen, because, like, I think the first time that I saw something like this, it was a cartoon form, like, years ago. I was, like, 6 or something, or whatever. But each of the iterations that I've seen, it's been slightly different. I think this is the only one where there's like that the mental link between the siblings, which is seriously useful for multiple reasons. But yeah. So we'll see how that develops. Because like it's also one of those. There's enough of the base storyline represented in this that it's one of those. I can't tell if it's just that there's a lot of similarities between this and other things that I've read, or if I've legitimately read this before and just have no memory of it. I think the mental link and Connor retaining human understanding in swan form were unique to this telling. Okay, that's what I figured. So yeah, that's what I'm thinking. But it's it's the same, like, is this canon or is this fanfic thing that I end up running into when I'm reading other stuff. So like, yeah, that's it's kind of engaged the fanfic reading part of my brain of like, is this a thing that is in the original storyline or is this like unique to this iteration? The idea that it ends up as like a fanfic thing, and that's my that's the lens that I see it through. Is all right. That's where we're going, apparently. Uh, but yeah. Yeah. Because I know I've seen, like, 3 different versions of the ending. So we'll see what happens. Folklore, the original fanfic. Seriously. I mean, it is, though. It is. And, like, the number of headcanons that people must have had, like, for certain parts of folklore, because, like, you can trace certain things in, like, a literary lineage, and it's like, okay, yeah, that matches up, that matches up. Like, no, I don't like they went over there, so, like, we're gonna go over here now. Alright, that was a choice. Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many things that are known as, like, the histories, but oh no. Okay, yeah, that was the thingy for the keypad. Um, yeah. uh, Also, I do appreciate that. I think it was Connor that made a reference to the story of the children of Lear. Like, alright. Talking about the source material in the thing. Alright, cool. Go for it. Yeah. Tradition is just old fanfic, right? Yeah. Yeah, uh-huh. Basically. Basically, yeah. So there's that. Um, yeah. Which, like, I know people have said it before, but just the idea of something like Dante's works and stuff being Bible fanfic is kind of hilarious. But it is, though. It just is. Alright. Alright. So, uh, chapter 6 ends with the brothers going, stories remain important to the story. Exactly. Okay. Good to know. That's kind of the vibe that I was getting. Cause, yeah, the stories told either verbally or mentally seems to be Serica's, um, kind of preferred coping mechanism, I suppose, or baseline coping mechanism, however you want to say it. Knee-jerk reaction, I guess. At least so far. Alright. So, chapter 6 starts with Serica turning 14, if I remember right. um, and making up some rosemary tea for cramps because just got a period. And is still not doing so great in the foraging side of things because most of her energy and everything is going into making the shirts out of the starwort. But there we go. And by this time she's been able to make one shirt and a bit, but needed more starwort because the lake, or at least the part of the lake that she's on, has kind of been exhausted at the moment. So walks a bit further into the forest and starts saying Ogum markings on the trees, recognizing it from some of Connor's work. And meets an ancient, but finds an ancient oak in the forest with a face carved into it. So what you would generally see as a protector guardian tree, essentially, a sacred guardian tree of the forest. And there's generally some kind of offering space. If it's a known offering point, or if it's a known kind of sacred space, a lot of times you'll find a place to leave offerings, whether it's a worn stone that's kind of got a bowl shape to it, or it's just a slab of wood or a slab of stone or what have you by the sacred point. It could be a spring, a tree, what have you. At which point, often food is left there as an offering of protection or thanks or what have you to the deities or the spirits or the fae, depending on where you are and the nature of the offering being made. If it's in thanks or if it's a supplication or what have you, it changes. And in this particular, there was bread and cheese left. And it depends on the people, it depends on the culture. I know in some areas, practitioners, so in this case, the spiritual leaders, might sometimes visit the sacred places to collect offerings and redistribute it to those who don't have food, who are dealing with food insecurities and stuff. In this particular, it'd probably be more like it's intended to be left there to be consumed by deity, spirit, etc. And Sorcha, being hungry, thanks the oak and the spirits and takes the bread and cheese so that she and Lynn can have something that isn't the meager like berries and whatever else she's managed to find. And as she's walking home, the narration cuts in, and you get a really intense foreshadowing of some like terrible event that's going to follow that action. Which, like, taken in conjunction with there being a lot of like clothes and whatever and food stores that went missing at the last midsummer, and that particular offering disappearing, like in total, it's not just like partially gone. If you don't think that it's the Fae or the people under the hill or what have you, it would be reasonable to assume that there's someone living in the associated thing. We appreciate that Marillier telegraphs the triggering stuff from a mile away. Yeah. That, yeah. Because, like, the number of times that I've read something and it's like, ah, da 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 da, boom! Like, no. 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 That needs a warning on it. That needs a warning on it. Yeah. Seriously. Yeah. And like the next time the brothers show up, we've got like mention of Elish being forced to marry someone from like the northern community instead of like the Sevenwaters community to like the west of her family's territory. And there's mention of someone bearing the mark of the raven that would unite the people. But it's a legend, and of course it's not going to be a thing. And like that, honestly, that's the point that I remember. Like that thing with like the person with the mark of the raven I remember being in at least 2 other stories, I want to say. Unless they're the same one and I'm just remembering it poorly. But I remember, like, I looked up something to find, like, the other ones in the series. Yeah, I'm gonna pop it up in like a second here. I remember, like, yeah, okay, because I was looking up like the titles for the other ones because the cover looked so familiar, and I remember there being a character named Red, and there being mention of like someone with the mark of the raven. In a storyline set in like the same time period. So, like, is that a thing that's in multiple stories, or have I just read this and have no recollection of it? The Child of the Prophecy is a thing in the next 2 books. Yeah, like, yeah. Because, like, I remember reading one that's called The Raven Warrior, but that was Alice Bouchard, if I remember right. But there's being that certain parts of high school are kind of really fuzzy. That, and this is like, if I have read it before, that's when it would have been. I don't know. But there we go on that. So, yeah. Ow. Okay. So, Raven working the king or savior type person is a thing in other British stories too. Oh, good to know. Good to know. Yeah, because I remember it popping up in like 2 different ones, I think, so. Specifically that one, though. Which, there's a lot, from what I remember, there's a lot of potential issues in there, especially with like bodily autonomy not really being a thing. But yeah, it's a good one. Alright. So, as you might observe up top here, we've got the trigger warning for sexual assault. I'm gonna take it down once we've gotten past that discussion point, but just a warning, like visual and audio. If you need to click off now, I'm gonna try and keep it to like 5-6 minutes max. Or you can mute it, what have you. Just be aware and keep yourself safe. Okay? If you need to pop off for a bit, or even if you need to just exit stage left, that's cool. Just be aware of it. And the warning is going to be there in the YouTube version too when it's posted, and I'll try and like demarcate like a timestamp in the description or comments or something for that if you need to bypass it too. So be aware of that. All right. So actually, no, it'd probably be a little bit longer than that, just because it goes on for the rest of the chapter. Okay. Yeah. So it's is it the next midsummer? Yeah, it's gotta be midsummer because it wouldn't be midwinter at that point. So it's the next midsummer, circus 14, and it's a nice day, nice and cheery. Takes her materials down to the lake to try and sew the different patches together, and he's in the process of making. I think it's the third shirt at that point. Just got either two and a bit or no, it's one and like half of another one, I think. And starts hearing Lynn bark up by the cave. So, okay, well, she's barking. And now there's people voices. Okay. And here's Lynn have a confrontation with somebody. So, goes to make sure that her dog's okay. But she had two and a bit. Okay, that makes more sense. Because like she was kind of powering through them at one point. Yeah, okay. So yeah, two and a bit. Two in the front half. That's what it was. Yeah. Okay. Um, and no, so and Ash is coming up, sees someone coming around the corner with a bloody knife, and like the implication that he killed Lynn is like real strong, you know. And there ends up being three guys. They like that dude, someone behind her, and the guy that was at the base of the tree that she was climbing out of. Yeah. Moment of silence for Lynn, the loving and brave. Exactly. Like, as a strategy, I understand why someone would go after the protector animals in order to, like, not have that be a hindrance to what you want to do to whoever you're attacking. But just no. Nope. Nope. And the from the descriptions and stuff, the guy that was under the tree probably had some kind of like developmental disability, and at which point he thought that he'd seen a fairy girl and was real excited about it. So probably told the people in the village that he'd seen a fairy. Same day, same time that a lot of supplies had gone missing. And then, because he'd seen the fairy, was part of a 3-man jaunt to go find the fairies or whatever. So the first two violently assault Sorcha, and as a kind of defense mechanism, she's telling herself the stories of the Lady of the Forest to kind of as a protection and to distance herself from what's happening. And that only works so well. Yeah. Before they leave, they say like, "Oh, well, we'll be back later," and then head off into the forest. And she's doing her best to dissociate. Exactly. And that happens to be midsummer. So as the sun goes down, the brothers you walk up the banks to the cave and find her and Lynn. And from what we understand, they were probably the swans on the lake, just kind of hanging out while she was there, stitching the shirts together, sitting on a rock on the lake shore. And, like, at which point, in swan form, they have kind of a vague awareness of what's happening. And then you have Connor, who still has his human mind in swan form. And none of them were able to do anything. And in the aftermath, got Connor trying to do whatever he can. Finbar ends up like opening his mind to kind of wrap her in a protective mental embrace at that point, because physical touch is too much. Fully understandable. And um, Padraig is like the designated healer, because they were the only two who really worked with medicine and things. Like, she worked with people, he worked with animals, but it's the same general principle, and most of the same plants and things. So Padraig is getting the materials together, and they use self heal and spores from Wolf's Claw to try and help her, but she's dealing with like a lot of pain and guilt and just general helplessness. Finbar blocking out the trauma replay with positive imagery is so cool. It really is. It really is. Like, seriously. Like, seriously. It's like, I can't do much, but I can do this. Like, oh. Also enjoyed the swift justice that was meted out. Yeah. In a big way. Like, it is interesting too, because we've got the more like physical of the brothers, who are just like, well, we went and did this thing, and then we've got Finbar, who went with like the hunting party, for lack of a better word, the arm of justice, uh, to exact revenge and mete out justice against asshole rapist, and it was protecting Serica's mind the whole night, and he's being blasted for like just sitting there and not talking and stuff. It's like, just because you don't see it happening doesn't mean that nothing's going down, dude. Like, but yeah, just the idea that Welly was sitting there talking about, like, oh yes, well, the mists come in and like people get lost in the forest and they're never seen again. It happens as like the fogs are rolling in, and after they're dead, the mosses and the vines kind of just grow over the bodies to hide them from view and everything. It's like, yeah, that's one dude that you don't want to be messing with his family. Just point blank. Like Liam might be the oldest, but like you don't you don't want to get on, like, just in general, right? You don't want to get on the bad side of one of the druids just because, but like when it's when it's a druid who has an entire family of siblings to take care of because they're the only ones who can depend on each other at this point, and your sister has to be left to her own devices, like 363 days a year. I thought he was just talking, but he was also doing the thing. Yeah. Like, he was essentially narrating it. It's like, oh yeah, no, like, they're long gone. They're never gonna find them. No one's ever gonna find them. The mists get really strong this time of day. Imagine that. Yeah. Don't be screwing with the druid's kid sister, dude. Like, that's how you end up real dead, real fast. Like, seriously. Oh. Yeah. And then, like, after that, like, they have to go back to the lake, and Sorcha's left by herself again. Extra dead. Yeah, super extra dead. Like, and Sorcha's left to, like, by herself again, and has to deal with, like, severe PTSD and nightmares and, like, flashbacks and everything, and is afraid to even just go out to her garden and grab some. Ow. Just dip my lip. Ow. There we go. Um. And it's a fade. A fade. She's afraid. She's afraid to go get supplies from her garden, so she's running low on. Yeah, I'm alright. It's just between the shoulder and the thing, it's like, ow. But yeah, she's afraid to just go out and gather supplies because it's an open space. And with how the last time she went out to do anything, it's terrifying. And she can't bring herself to do any more of the weaving or sewing materials together. And she's in the middle of like what sounds like kind of a depressive spiral because of everything that's happened. And at this point, it kind of seems like it's she needs to make the shirts, but it also feels kind of hopeless because she has to make the shirts by herself in the middle of nowhere, and her support system is currently flying around with basically no human awareness. And weren't able to protect her the last time there was an issue. She gains a real appreciation for what Simon was going through, which adds to her guilt. Yeah, yeah. There was a point in there where she's thinking back on it, and like, I was just this kid who kept saying like, "Oh no, you just need to be positive," and he's sitting there like massively suicidal. It's like, what was I even doing? And yeah, that, yeah, seriously, seriously. Um, and trying to get through that as best you can, and process without spiraling more, which is tricky on a good day. But like, if you're stuck in your own head and that's kind of the only stimulus that's around at this point, especially because it's like it happened not too far from the cave, and like that was like it's her territory. It's not like she was out somewhere in the wilds and whatever. It's her space. And there's now like no protector critter. So all of that just compiling on top of everything else. And then the lady of the forest, who I can never remember the name of, kind of comes out of the trees and says, like, it's time for you to go. Like, it's time for you to leave and go somewhere else. Um, so, at this point, if you're listening on the audio or watching the thing, I'm gonna take the trigger warning down. Unless there's something else that anyone wants to share for that particular chunk of the story. So I've got 2 bullet points for the end of chapter 6 right here. We think authors should think real hard before using rape as a plot point, and we think Marillier does the work to make it necessary. Yeah. That is a very valid point. Like, there's too many times where it's just, like, thrown in there as, like, a thing. But, like, no, it's in there. Yeah. Like, that's not something that you put in there to make your character have a quirky backstory or some shit. That's no. And it happens far too many times. Okay, one sec. Also, yeah. Before we do anything else, I'm just gonna, like, do a stretch. Real quick. Oh, jeez. And we're glad that part is over. Yeah. Okay. So, I'm gonna take this down. There we go. And I realize, like, if anything pops, y'all are gonna be able to hear it probably, because the mic is, like, right there. But, is what it is. Ow. Well, I will say this is the most that I've been able to extend my arm all day. So that's a positive. Also, yes. Slight break for stretching if any y'all need a stretch. Yeah. Good stretching times. How are you doing, guys? Ow. We hadn't used the stretch redeem because we didn't know if it had hurt your shoulder. Glad you can stretch. Yeah, I know it's one of those that, like, I tried because the easiest way to stretch out my shoulder when it's doing a thing is to, like, lean up against a wall or something, and I couldn't lift my arm enough to do that without it, like, being screaming painful. But after sitting here for almost, like, 2 hours with the heat pack, it seems to have calmed down enough that that's more or less okay. So I can, yeah, I can definitely feel it. But it's better. It's better. It's annoying, but it's better. So there's that. Okay. So, the Lady of the Forest says that Sorcha has to leave, which that's a big improvement. Exactly. Yay! Big improvements. Yay for big improvements. But yeah, the Lady of the Forest says that Sorcha has to leave, and that lines up with Finbar saying that there was some kind of travel involved. And that lines up with the previous statement that the lady said, where she was telling Sorcha that she would have to go on a long journey. So she was gonna have to go on a long journey. This is the time that she's going to have to go on the long journey. And tells her that there's a small boat tethered under the willows that will take you where you need to be. Which is interesting because, like, in like tree symbolism and stuff, like, willows tend to be very flexible. Because, like, if you look at them, all the branches, like, hanging down, like, that's the branches. It's not just like vines hanging off a tree or something. That's the branches. And the wood is a very naturally, like, flexible material. they grow on riverbanks a lot of times, kind of at the join between earth and water, which is part of why they're kind of one of the sacred trees. But also, they're seen as a symbol of survival and rebirth. So she's going from a traumatic situation over water that tends to be symbolic of like crossing into a new life kind of thing, just like the river Styx and everything else. Like there's like a river to the underworld, or a river to like crossing into a new life, really. Also interesting that Sorcha's pretty starving at this point. Imagine she looked a lot like a willow. That is true. That is true. Yeah. Yeah. She'd probably highly resemble the willow at that point, with how um, kind of malnourished she's probably at this point. And then the chapter ends with Sorcha heading out to some distant place across the water. Oh yeah, she's surviving and rebirthing and traveling into a new situation over water big time. Yeah. Yeah. So, that is the end of the notes that I've got here. So, ow, 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 ow. Where's the power cord? Where'd you go? Ow. There you are. I was fine, and then I moved, and then I'm not fine at all. There we go. Okay. So, yeah. So, anyone have further analyses? No. So, yeah, Oh, yeah, and in addition to having to leave, the stipulation was made that Sorcha was only allowed to bring one pack. So she's got the shirts and the fibers that she's already spun, and the carving that Simon gave her, and the it's not a medallion, but it's not a medallion or a token. It's the thing. What's that word? Finbar had a thing that he gave Sorcha. Amulet. There we go. Words. Words are hard. And the clothes that presumably she arrived there with, and everything else was left behind. Know that she takes the bead carving. What? That was a sentence. Note that she takes the bead Simon carved with her. Okay, so is it a bead or is it like a block? Because I was thinking it was like a a piece of wood that had like a I'm losing the words. Like a signet carved into it almost. We wanted to eat her up before she went and okay, words. Again. We wanted her to eat up before she went and we're frustrated she didn't take a knife. There we go. Apparently it's that kind of day today. Alright. Yeah, like I would think. Of course, also with that, each of the brothers had their knife, and their knife was used to kill one of the guys. So it could be like a connection with that as to why the knives were left. But also, it's a defense thing. So, like, yes, it's carved wood, but it's a very small thing that would fit in the palm of your hand. Think it was a bead, but maybe it's just a doodad. Yeah. Because, like, I kept having it in my head that it was like a carved, like coin almost. That, like, because that's every time that I've seen something where it's like, this is the mark of my people kind of a thing. That's how it's been formatted, because then you could use it as like a signet ring kind of a thing to like authorize documents or press it into wax or something like that. But depending on the culture, it could also be like uh, beads or whatnot, just depending. But if he's Breton, it would probably be something else. I don't know. Ah. Yeah. But yeah. So there's that. Any other analyses while we're at it, or no? All right. So I think that's it for this week. Yeah, I think so. Good. I think that's it for this week. For next week, we good for 7 and 8. Yeah. Actually, ow. Ah. Because 7 and 8 would be just under 4 hours. And then we've got 16 chapters, so another good couple of weeks for that. Okay. Sounds sounds good. Alright. So there's that. Ow, yeah. Okay. Well, thank you muchly for hanging out and participating in the discussion and all of that and input and everything. Much appreciated. We'll see you all later. On Thursday, if not sooner. So yeah. Have a good one. And we'll see what happens next week. Alright. Let me type. Alright. Yeah, I'm not even gonna try and do a raid today. It's not happening. Hugs. Hugs for everybody. Alright. Have a fabulous rest of your day. There's some beautiful scenes to look forward to in the next bit, if we remember right. Awesome. Awesome. Alright. Have a fabulous rest of your day. Thank you for the hugs. Much appreciated. I will see you all later. Once again, if you're watching this on YouTube, all the links and everything are in the description down below. And remember, we're doing chapters 7 and 8 next week over on Twitch. We'll see you all later. Have a fabulous day. Bye! Ow, ow. Ah, ha. Ha. One sec. Ow, ow, ow. Bye, everybody. There we go. See y'all next time.